The final leg of our RxJS journey is probably one we're grateful has been left till the end. But if you're the type of person who eats the frog's legs first, then, well, tough luck. That said, frog's legs can be tasty. You can decide for yourself at the end. Now let's get to the cooking. First we're mixing up an observable set to a property called authState. This observable is going to emulate the authentication status of a user. This is not a normal user, but a script trying to break our application. So we set the observable to emit alternating values of true and false about 3 seconds apart from each other, starting with an initial emission of true and ending with false. So we have an erratic authentication status. Next we set the transform data property to a piped version of the state observable. The first operator is switchMap, which we use to check if the user is authenticated or not, as indicated by whether the value is truthy. If they are not authenticated, we use throwError from RxJS and pass a string. If authenticated, we return the data observable. Running the code, we see an initial emission of data, because the authentication status started off as true, and then the error, and then nothing else. The nothing else part is problematic, because the user was re-authenticated again, albeit for about 3 seconds. If things were working properly, we would see another log of data here. To do that, we need to bring in the retry operator, pipe it in after the switchMap operator, and rerun. Now we get something different, the data, but no error strings. And the reason is that the throw error value is essentially being ignored, and the retry is simply firing every time an error occurs. There are at this point 2 things we can do, write some better error logic, or specify when to retry. Of course the best solution is a combination of both, but let's look at the first. Import the retry_when operator and swap it for retry. Retry_when fires when it detects an error, which from throwError comes in the form of an observable. So we pipe the tap operator in and log the error. This time we get the error and the retry result. This is much more informative, especially in development, and might be enough for even complicated errors, though it can be made much better. Currently the error string is being logged at exactly the same time as the retry result. We can alter this with the delayWhen operator. We return an observable in the form of a time instance from RxJS. We pass 1000 milliseconds, which will delay the rerun of the method by 1 second. There is much more you can do with retry_when, and as for all things RxJS, learn-rxjs.io is the resource. So we've covered potential connection, hacker or service provider related errors. But what about data related errors, such as when the user's data is inconsistent with the model, or is falsy, or something like that? Let's simulate such an error by first changing the data emitted by the source data observable. We change the value to a new object of the mock data with a different name property. Cast it to any to prevent TypeScript errors. The point which this data gets returned, and therefore where we need to check for errors, is the truthy part of the switchMap statement. Currently it returns the data observable and nothing else, so we call pipe on that and pass in some operators, the first of which is switchMap. It may seem unfit, but it's the most sensible of the operators to use. Pass in some random checks such as whether the user's name is Jeff. If it isn't, throw an error, and if it is, celebrate, or simply return the data. We have to return data wrapped in an observable. Unlike map, switchMap, as well as sister operators, mergemap and concatmap, don't wrap return values in observables. Anyway, now when we rerun the code, we get repeated error statements because the data name property does not equal Mr. Bezos. The error is being passed up the chain to retry_when, which is rerunning the code and resulting in the constant errors. This is ugly and basically a dead end. It also tells the user nothing. For that we need the final operator we're going to look at today, catchError. Pipe it underneath the switchMap operator. Unlike retry_when, it unwraps the value spit out by throwError, so we can do a simple console error statement within a classic block of code. Finally we return an observable of null. And that's what it looks like in the browser. This error is obviously the simplest you can create. In the real world you're probably going to create your own error objects with specific codes and custom messages, and then perform logic accordingly. That is relatively easy with throwError because the returned error can be any type of data you want. In this video we've performed all the error logic on the observable itself. When things get complicated, which they easily can, and often necessarily, the best thing to do is create a custom pipe and move all the logic to it. RxJS operators are just functions. They take some value, do something with it, and return it. So custom pipes are used exactly the same way RxJS operators are. See you next time.